And now I would like to introduce today's special guest. The Honourable Greg Sorbara is Ontario's Finance Minister, and yesterday he brought in his government's fourth budget. It is something of a tradition here at the Canadian Club that we host a lunch with the Finance Minister and the days following the budget, and I'm frankly always amazed that they are still standing. The budget process is a grueling one. It involves literally months of briefings, discussions, debates about policy, debates about messaging, decisions made, decisions reversed, priorities set, priorities questioned. And that is as it should be. The annual budget is the most important document a government produces. It is the document that lays out that government's priorities and demonstrates to taxpayers how their precious money will be spent. In today's accountability-focused climate, a budget can easily be seen as the government's contract with taxpayers. And in an election year, which this is, it is also a key platform document. Little wonder then that so much work goes into getting the budget just right. And little wonder that it is considered to be one of the most difficult jobs in government. Because it's not just about spending money, it's about finding money. It's about realizing you don't have the money you thought you did. It's about enormous pressure to spend money you don't have on programs people desperately need, and the enormous competing pressure to cut programs people desperately need in order to save money and balance the books. Budgets are all about competing pressures and competing interests, and it is a wily and talented finance minister who's able to walk that fine line. Minister Sorbara has a long and distinguished history of public service and private sector achievement. He was first elected MPP in 1985 in the previous Liberal government. He held a series of senior cabinet posts, including colleges and universities, skills development and labour. He returned to the private sector in 1995, where he served as a partner in the Sorbara Group, an Ontario-based land development and property management company. He also served as director of the United Way for York Region. He was re-elected as MPP for Vaughan King Aurora in a 2001 by-election, and after the 2003 general election, became the McGuinty government's finance minister. He gave us a budget yesterday that is a classic example of walking the fine line between competing priorities and interests. From the new Ontario Child Benefit for low-income families to an increase in welfare rates and a hike in the minimum wage, this was a budget that could be seen to be a poverty fighter. But with a business tax cut and an acceleration in the elimination of the capital tax and books that are not only balanced but in surplus, this was also a budget that could be held up as fiscally responsible and business-friendly. As I said, it's a budget that walks a fine line, and a man responsible for it is here today to tell us all about it. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to our podium today the Finance Minister for the Province of Ontario, the Honourable Greg Sorbara.
Well, thank you very much, Noella. It's just a thrill to be here. It's a thrill to be back here. I think it's a great tradition that you have of inviting finance ministers to come and speak after their budgets. Given that there is an election coming up, can I simply say that I hope I'm available for years to come to do this work? I remember my first invitation here. It was after our first budget, and those were tougher times, and you were very, very welcoming. The second budget was about post-secondary education. The third, I was actually not here for the third. I was on a special assignment with the RCMP. They never paid me for that. What's up with that, Helen? I'm delighted to see the students here, and I think it's a wonderful thing that you bring them here every year. You will see some bleary-eyed people amongst you if they just look like the bags are a little bit more pronounced than usual. They work in the Ministry of Finance. And I'm delighted that they have come here today to this lunch. I make the point just to underline the fact that a budget is a collective process. It is the entire government, really, re-examining its priorities and identifying those priorities in one concise and articulate document. But there is a special tribe within the Ministry of Finance that really burns the midnight 1, 2 in the morning oil for literally months. And this budget is being very well received, and it's a tribute to the work that all of them have done under the leadership of my Deputy Minister, Colin Anderson, and my Chief of Staff, Diane Flanagan. They have just worked tirelessly, and I just want to use the occasion to publicly thank them. Now, I want to apologize as well if my remarks are brief and that there's no written text, there's no record. There may be a videotape. You see, we have to see what the reviews are like on the evening of the budget and the morning after to determine what's appropriate for the Canadian Club. Also, I know that a lot of you want to get out here and get back to work this afternoon. I suspect that not one of you will be visiting a golf course, although I think some of you are thinking about it. It is time, and those who study literature understand the expression pathetic fallacy. As the weather warmed up about 3:50, 10 minutes before I was about to deliver my budget, I said, "Hey, big guy, you've got it right. The spring is coming." Is there anyone going to go golfing? I wonder. My brother is a crazy avid golfer. He's also probably one of the worst in the country. He's in the real estate business, but he's got to camouflage his love of the game. So as he's leaving the office, he's in real estate, the code is, I am going to have a look at an 18-lot subdivision. And so you know where he's going to be for the rest of the afternoon. Since I presented the budget, people have been asking me repeatedly in interviews and informally, what did I like best about our budget? And I'm going to try and answer that question through the course of my remarks today. But to sum it up, I think what I like best about this year's budget is that it truly reflects and will reflect the values of the people of this province. And I think when a government can do that, they are on very solid ground. This province values the quality of public education. This province knows how important public education is. And this province knows that when we were elected 4 years ago, public education was not in a good state. Our schools now are better places to learn. Anyone that is still unsure of that needs to visit a public school, needs to talk to teachers, needs to look in the eyes of students, needs to know that we no longer lose millions and millions of student days and strikes. Kids and their teachers are thriving in our schools, and that's a very high value in this province, and we continue to invest in public education in our budget. The people of this province value a strong and healthy and responsive healthcare system. It's our core business. Roughly 45% of every dollar that you send to us is used to strengthen healthcare. In this budget, we are allocating some $37.9 billion to improve healthcare. And I want to say, where's Mary Jo? Where is she? Over there. I want to say how pleased I am that in our continuing expansion and strengthening of healthcare, that this year we are able to add pediatric surgeries to our wait time strategy. And that means an awful lot to the folks at Sick Kids Hospital. When the people of Ontario value post-secondary education, they understand that our true strength and the quality of our society is really going to be about how well we educate ourselves. 2 years ago, the budget was about post-secondary education. $6.2 billion additional resources in that sector. We've got a lot more to do, but we took some major steps then, and we continue to invest today. And we add to that the investments that we are making in research and development, and that's really driven by the Premier. The people of this province also value the role of government in helping those that live on the edge, those that live in poverty, those that live with very meager means, those that society pays little attention to. We haven't done much of that in Ontario for a very long time. And with this budget, we turn the page. We're making significant investments in the lives of children living in poverty. Over the course of the next 5 years, $2.1 billion. We are turning the page on the way in which we have designed our system of social support. It's extremely important because it reflects the values of this province. And we haven't spoken to those values very much over the course of the past many years. But it's just not benefits for children that we're transforming. We're allocating almost $400 million in additional support for better housing. Nothing is more important to those vulnerable populations than a home. You're having Steve Mahoney here. I quoted him in my budget yesterday, although I didn't give him credit. When Steve was a public housing advocate and a social housing advocate for the federal government, the way he described it was, it all starts with an address. And with this budget, far more people are going to have an address that is a good, strong home. We're also adding, over the course of 4 years, $200 million into the developmental services sector. Let's translate that back into simpler English. Those working people, men and women who look after Ontario's disabled populations, those who for the rest of their lives will live with disabilities, whether of a mental sort or a physical sort. And that sector, through 19 pre-budget consultations, told me clearly, you need to help us because we are not reaching the standards that we owe to this community. And with this budget, we turn a page there. This province also values governments that live within their means. And I can't tell you what a joy it is for a Minister of Finance to present a balanced budget. We've been working hard at this for quite a long time. 3.5 years ago, this province was deeply in debt, and it was floundering. And things were out of balance at Queen's Park, and we've worked diligently. And this is not just, oh, well, magically, it's before an election, you've presented a balanced budget. Absolutely not. You look at the progress that we've made from day one. Each financial year, we have outperformed. So in the first year, we were down to a deficit of $1.8 billion and on and on. And the year that we're just in, that finishes in 8 days, will finish on the positive side of the ledger. We'll have a surplus of about $310 million at the end of the current year. The year that we're coming into, the budget year, we anticipate a surplus of about $400 million if, as we expect, we will not need the reserve that we set aside. Reserve is about prudence and providing for the wholly unexpected. As we go forward, we are looking at surpluses even after we provide for larger surpluses. But it's not just enough to balance the budgets. It's equally important to place a premium on the value that the people of Ontario place on governments that can strengthen the economy. From the perspective of a finance minister, every budget is the same. The test is, does it add to the economic fundamentals of the province? And I am absolutely thrilled at the way in which we have been able to initiate programs and restructure programs with a view to strengthening the economy. I think first and foremost among those initiatives is of full transformation of a very poorly designed business education tax. I'm not sure how many of you follow issues of taxation, but let me put it in simple terms. Does it make any sense at all that a business in the City of Toronto pays business education tax rates that are much higher than businesses across the way in Mississauga or across the way in Vaughan? It skews fairness and competitiveness. And we decided in this budget we're going to take that on. So we're transforming the system. Over the course of 7 years, we will lower business education tax rates in every municipality where the rate is higher than 1.6%. Within 7 years, we will have reduced business education taxes by some $540 million. And I got to tell you, when a finance minister has an opportunity to reduce taxes, you know that things are going pretty well. We've also decided to make a firm legislative commitment to eliminate the capital tax in Ontario. Those of you, again, who follow this stuff know that capital taxes are taxes that reduce job creation, they hamper growth, they hamstring entities large and small. They are regressive, and they don't have a place anymore in the tax mix of a thriving economy like the Canadian economy. Last year, Dwight Duncan proposed to speed up the time for elimination of the capital tax if the province developed the financial capacity. And yesterday, I was delighted to say in the Legislature that we have that capacity now, and we will eliminate capital tax in Ontario on July 1st, 2010. We're also transforming the property tax assessment system. It's been just is it too colloquial to say a nuisance, a bother? It really didn't serve the people of Ontario well. So we've changed it. We've thrown out the business of annual assessments, which gave rise to such volatility. And we're putting in place an assessment system that will have a 4-year cycle. If assessments go up, that will be phased in over a period of 4 years. If your assessment goes down, you take the immediate benefit of that assessment for the next 4-year period. We're also improving the appeal system because it was, again, it didn't serve the people of Ontario well. And we're very, very proud of the way in which we have been able to transform that system, and it will serve the people of Ontario much more effectively. I just want to wrap up with a few words about the impact of this budget on this great city of Toronto. As we reform business education tax, the businesses in this city, large and small, when fully implemented, will pay $231 million less in business education tax. It's something that our mayor here has been calling for some time, and I was thrilled that we could deliver it in this budget. The elimination of the capital tax is going to strengthen financial markets in this city and ensure that we have a vital financial service sector for years to come. The investment that we're making in kids, well, let's face it, there's far too much poverty in the city of Toronto. And part of that $2.1 billion, a big chunk of it, is going to change the lives of too many of the 2.5 million people that live in this city. We're investing in more housing, so more housing will be built in the city. And we're investing significantly more in the arts. In my view as Minister of Finance, I want to play some small role in making sure that Toronto increases even more, expands its capacity as the great arts and cultural capital on this continent. And we make some new investments in the Ontario Arts Council, in the Ontario Trillium Foundation, and we helped to launch a marvelous new enterprise called Luminato, which will be a signature new arts and cultural festival, a festival of creativity that begins on June the 1st right here in this great city. I'm just encouraging all of you to book off June 1st to June 10th because this is going to be a show that will attract the world. The objective is, within a very short time, to be at the level of the Edinburgh Festival and the Festival in Venice. And given what I've seen about what's happening so far, I think we're going to get there very quickly. Finally, in the budget, we begin the initiatives that are going to dominate public policy around the world for many years to come, and that is dealing with what the Premier calls the defining challenge of our generation, climate change, the impact of global warming, and the steps that we have to take to ensure that Ontarians adjust to a very different way of consuming and using energy and stewarding this marvelous planet. So there's a lot more to do. My goodness, every month on the job, one sees that the agenda just grows and grows. But yesterday was a particularly special day. We were able to announce that we've brought the province back to financial health. We were able to say that we're entering a new era of economic strength, and we were able to devote a good part of that new economic strength to the people who need it the most. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Sorbara. I'm now going to call on John Niles, President of the Empire Club of Canada, with some words of thanks from both clubs. John?
Madam President, Mr. Sorbara, past presidents, members, guests of the Canadian Club of Toronto and the Empire Club of Canada. If it is true, as former President Jimmy Carter said, the measure of a society is determined by the way it treats its most vulnerable members, then you, Mr. Sorbara, have shown by the new budgetary policies of the Government of Ontario, as you have focused on public education, health care, affordable housing and child poverty, that we have the potential, because of your government, to become a great society. And so on behalf of the members and guests here today and those watching, I wish to thank you for your compassion, for your vision, for a better Ontario. And as a personal note of thanks, I wish to give you, on behalf of the Empire Club of Canada, a book that I wrote about how I became father to over 1,000 crack and heroin babies. So thank you so much.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
Thank you for your
Thank you, John. Thank you all for coming today. This meeting is now adjourned.